what's going on, Holy Culture family? What's up, positive people? It's B Plus here, and thank you for checking out the Be Positive Music Show, a very special edition of the Be Positive Music Show. I'm hanging out here with Rasool Berry. Say what's up to our Holy Culture family.
What's up, Holy Culture fam? I'm no stranger to Holy Culture. I had the opportunity to connect with James Rousseau on Juneteenth last year, and then of course got to give a shout out to my dude DJ Wado, also representing New York City, where I live now. So love Holy Culture.
Yeah. So this is going to be a lot of fun just because I want to bring you on to talk about Juneteenth in particular, but you have a great knowledge of Christian hip hop and the history of Christian hip hop as it relates to like the Philly scene. So we're going to hope to get into that and a whole lot more. But before we do that, just tell the people a little bit about yourself, your upbringing in Christianity, and just
Yeah, sure. So in West Philadelphia, born and raised. On the playground is where I spent most of my days.
Got it.
That's true. No, so I was born and raised in Philly, and really just grew up a hip hop head. Just fell in love with the culture, and did not grow up in a Christian home at all. Okay. Yeah, my parents had joined the Nation of Islam when I was born. That's where my name comes from. Rasool is Arabic. It means prophet. And so even with that, I feel like God had a plan for my name and my life in that way. But I ended up coming to faith in Christ at 17 between my senior year in high school and my freshman year in college. And so I go to college and I'm just like trying to figure out life, trying to understand what it means to walk with Jesus. And in the midst of that, I had this very specific moment. This is like in 1998 where like I go to this conference that had like gospel music playing or whatever. And the person that was at the conference running sound, he was like, "What'd you think?" And I was like, "It was cool." But I was like, I would love it if there were people that would like represent God's word and truth, but like through hip hop, because I'm a hip hop head. And I'm like thinking it doesn't exist. And he said, "Well, check this out." And he puts in a cassette tape because that was the time. And it was Heaven's Mentality. And my mind was blown. Wow. And I was like, this exists. I gotta get this. So I dubbed a copy. I listened to that joint the whole year. And then the next year I ended up meeting Cross Movement at the Impact 98 conference. And really from that point on, kind of learning under them, traveling with them, like sitting in Bible study, and really, they really had a profound impact on my own spiritual growth and even being in ministry.
Nice. So you've probably met Trig back then too.
Yes, I knew Trig from back in the day, and like the whole community. I remember the first time, I saw Truth, like he was his debut to the world. I remember when Flame, at the Holy Culture album release concert, which I actually, wrote and was the MC for that CD from the Cross Movement, that album, Holy Culture. And meeting JR and Flame and them just kind of getting started. So yeah, it's been dope to see the movement kind of build over the years.
Yeah, that really takes me back because I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, and for me it was just like a look into like this hip hop world, because I really wasn't like a hip hop head until like my brother bringing home Christian hip hop and things like that. And I remember for me, it was Heaven's Mentality 2 was the very first album that I don't know if I bought that one. No, I didn't buy that one. The very first album I bought was House of Reps in 99. So for you guys who don't know, if you're doing your math, it's a 25-year anniversary of House of Representatives. Wow. So yeah, I still remember growing up, just kind of, like I said, I grew up not like I said, but I grew up in a Christian household through and through, kind of maybe a little bit different than you. So we grew up with a whole lot of choir music. Yeah. So we got Fred Hammond,
which is dope too.
Oh yeah, in its own right, definitely.
Right, in its own right. Yeah.
The John P. Keys, Joe Pace, all those great choirs. But for me, it was like, why are 40 people yelling at me? And with all them singing in unison, sometimes I couldn't make out the words. Right. But if I had one person sitting down talking to me, it meant that much more to me. Yeah. So I remember some of the early songs from Heaven's Mentality that I really enjoyed were, it was a Kincaid. It was a story about the Tonic was talking about.
Oh man,
was that Kiss 22?
So there's Blood Spiller.
That was the
there's a
Ambassador.
Thriller in Manila, Jesus
Yeah.
Christ versus Every Man's Killer. Sin and Death got the whole world getting
You
ill.
got it all.
But I praise God for the blood spiller. Yeah, there was that. There was Tonic had a joint on there. Then they did the ciphers at the end, and that was like what made it authentic.
Those were all, yeah.
Right, when you heard like the cipher, like, you know, so just bars for days, and that was like at the time when, you know, like it was something about seeing all of these dudes at the same time, all having a different angle and approach, but could like spit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And of course, you know, House of Representatives, that joint was like, you know me, huh? What?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, man, just so many great memories with those songs.
Yeah. So you have a lot of roots in the Christian hip hop world, but tell us a little bit about like what you do now, and kind of how. Obviously, I want to land with this Juneteenth project that you're working with, but tell us a little bit about like your history, in the work that you've done.
So, you know, I get that opportunity to serve as a teaching pastor at Bridge Church in Brooklyn, New York. Okay. So that's a part of what I do. But I also 3 years ago joined Our Daily Bread Ministries staff, and I got exposed to them. I mean, I knew about Our Daily Bread from the little devotional booklets with the nice little scenic image on it. When I first started walking with the Lord, but like about 5 years ago, someone that I knew from a different ministry context just reached out to me out the blue and was like, "Hey, how would you feel about traveling around the world to talk to people about Jesus and like try different foods?" I was like, "Yeah, that sounds amazing." Right. And so I said yes to it. It turned out he worked at Our Daily Bread Ministries, and the project ended up being called In Pursuit of Jesus, which you can still actually see on YouTube. Okay. We went to Sweden, Singapore.
I've seen a few of those before.
Yeah, South Africa, Israel, Argentina. I mean, it was an amazing experience. And that was when I realized that Our Daily Bread Ministries did a lot more than just the booklets. Like, oh, like y'all do podcasts and video content and books. And I was like, yo, sign me up. I'd love to do more with that. And so I came on to be a content developer. We started with the Where You're From podcast, which is a podcast that I've hosted at the intersection of faith and culture. And I get to talk to people like, I mean, we've had Lecrae on show, Wande, like all these different types of artists and people. Okay. And then we did the Juneteenth Faith and Freedom film that we put together, and as well as the soundtrack. To tell the story of Juneteenth specifically through the lens of faith.
That's really dope. And it's very important just to use something just as simple as media, just to get the word out. Just because sometimes, just like for me, sitting and listening to a choir wasn't able to do it. Yeah. But hearing some people rap was able to do it. Yeah. Same way, sometimes maybe over the pulpit, somebody may not be able to have the gospel really penetrate their heart, but through media, through a story about just learning about a person and the food that they enjoy, or you bring on a hip hop artist, a Christian hip hop artist, really can maybe light a fire in somebody's heart to really give the Lord a try. Yep. And that's all he needs. That's it. All he needs is a try. So Holy Culture Fam, we want to not only talk a little bit about his life and the things he's doing with Juneteenth, faith and freedom, but whenever I invite somebody on the show, I like to give them the opportunity to kind of do a little bit of a takeover. Okay. So for our first music break, you get to choose any song of your liking. Okay. To send us to break. Well, see, you took me down memory lane talking about like Heaven's Mentality and stuff. And so there was one of the first concerts I had ever experienced where I was like, yo, this Christian hip hop thing is on the next level, was a concert for the album release of Christology in Layman's Terms by the Ambassador. And I still remember the so vividly, like the album release concert. Wow. I was there for. It was like Corey Red, Precise, Truth, like Cross Movement. It was, and I remember DJ Official being in the choir stand with the turntables, RIP to him. And like, and it was so like when they played this song, Thug Joint, the whole building shook.
Like I was legit like
I can imagine.
Like dudes in Timbs, baggy jeans. This was like, you know, and there's a hook in the hook. It says, "I used to be a thug, but now I'm a believer. I used to be a thug. I know God is real. I used to be a thug, but now I'm a believer. No more drugs and no more deals."
Yeah.
And that was like so much people's heart cry. So I'm gonna play Thug Joint by The Ambassador.
All right, Holy Culture fam, you guys stay locked because we have a fun rest of the show planned for you guys. This is the Be Positive Music Show, and we will be right back.
I used to be a thug, but now I'm a believer. No more thug and no more deals. Okay, Doc, my occupation was thugging. The whole nine, I mean the robbing, the dealing, the mugging, the clubbing, the premarital loving. The type to put one in the oven, but I wasn't trying to be the husband. Sin was Lord, and I always obeyed the master. It told me sell drugs just to get the paper faster. Let me go to church, but wouldn't let me imitate the pastor. It only let me imitate my favorite rapper.
Welcome back, HCR fam. It's B Plus hanging out with Rasool Berry once again, just learning a little bit about his upbringing, a little bit about what brought him to this point of being a writer, director, and producing, and having some assistance in those areas. This film called Juneteenth, Faith and Freedom. You guys just heard a dope song. It's been out, like I said, for 25 years now. Thug Joint. I know I keep saying that. I'm making both of us feel a little bit old. We 80s babies,
good.
right?
Yeah.
So feel a little bit old, but the song still bangs. Make sure you guys go out just to give it a spin on this anniversary, on this 25th anniversary. That's Christology in layman's terms. Once again, that's Ambassador. The name of the song was Thug Joint. So before we get into this whole Juneteenth conversation, I do want to shout out just how this is happening right now. This is a crazy story. So going back maybe a couple of weeks ago, I shot you a DM on Twitter, but if you're not following somebody, it just goes into like this secret folder that nobody ever sees. So so he tweeted one day and I got underneath it and I just said, I referenced the tweet, but then I said, hey, check your DMs.
Right.
He doesn't know me from anybody. Long story short, over those maybe 10 days, we had conversations back and forth trying to lock down a virtual interview. But what happened was he sent me back, said maybe you have to push it to Monday because he said you're going to be in Texas.
Yes,
right?
Yeah, I just said I was going to be in Texas.
And I just said, hey, I'm in DFW. He shot me back 2 links, and I kid you not, one of the links, it was literally 5 minutes from my house. So I was just like, that's crazy. So what I ended up doing was saying, hey, you think you could possibly do this in person? And here we are from an undisclosed location in the DFW area. So I just want to kind of throw that out there to you guys, just kind of how this very special edition of the Be Positive Music Show is happening. This is the very first time I've had a live guest.
Wow.
Everything's been virtual. So you are definitely breaking the ice and doing it in a major way. So let's talk about how this documentary even came to be.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, it's amazing for one, but I've heard snippets of the backstory of how this came to be. So just kind of walk us through from the moment of inception to it dropping.
So as I mentioned, content developer with Our Daily Bread Ministries. We started in that role in February 21. Right.
Okay.
So one of the first meetings we have was to talk about expanding a specific sub-brand within Our Daily Bread Ministries called Voices. Voices is a sub-brand that's been developed for a few years that amplifies the voices and stories of Black Christian content creators.
Got it.
And so since like 2018, we've put out a specific Black History Month devotional that comes out in February. You can order it at experiencevoices.org, and it kind of just reflects on themes of God's faithfulness, even in the midst of hard times. And so we were looking at and what can we add to it? And we were talking, again, this is February, March 2021, like, yo, we should do something for Juneteenth. We should put a Juneteenth thing in that. And then this is before it became a national holiday. It didn't become a national holiday. That wasn't announced until June 21. So from February, we were like, yo, let's work on this. So then I reach out to Lisa Fields.
Shout out Lisa Fields.
Shout out to Lisa Fields, the other Fields.
Yeah, backstory, my name is Fields. She's my unofficial cousin.
Yeah, there you go.
She doesn't know it yet, but she's an unofficial cousin.
So we talked about, and she was like, because I would reach out to her like, hey, would you be interested in having somebody from Jude 3 contribute to the booklet? And she was like, yeah, but I think y'all should do a film. And I was like, that's a good idea. And so I went back, wrote a proposal, submitted that to our media team and our team, and folks got behind it, and we were like, let's go. And then we find out that like it becomes a national holiday. So it's like, yep, this is confirmation. And
so that's of 21.
That's 21. Okay. So we start really plotting it out like this. So it gets approved in December 21.
Got it.
Then February, I meet the director for the first time, and we plot out a plan to shoot. March, we shoot for 6 days in Galveston, Texas, Houston, and DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth. Then we edit it from April 1st until it comes out in June for 2 months.
So a whole film was put together in roughly.
Yeah, 6 months. Yeah. And dude, let me tell you, like, I didn't know how crazy that was until we started going to film festivals to screen the film. And I'm hearing like all these other documentarians like, bro, it took me 3 years,
all the hardships,
2 years to come out with a film. Y'all, how did it, like, when I tell them we did this in 6 months, they couldn't believe it. And I just think that was the hand of God on the project. Right. So that was how the film came together. And the idea was we wanted to tell a story of faith and freedom, because on two different fronts. Like on the one end, a lot of people know the story of how Christianity was misused and distorted to justify slavery.
Absolutely.
What they oftentimes leave out or don't know. And I learned this when I was taking African-American literature class, like that the reception of that message was different for the enslaved. Like they didn't become more docile. They didn't become more accepting of their circumstances, because in the message of Christianity, they found liberation and hope. And so we wanted to lean into that story of like what it looked like to have a message of oppression and the situation of slavery in our country, which was there for centuries. Yeah. And then still having the mix of that people who are trusting God and who are hoping for bigger and better things as a result of their own faith. And so we wanted to tell that story too. And we wanted to help people understand the holiday and see it as an opportunity that they could be able to be a light and to be a witness and understand like God cares about the whole person, mind, body, and soul. Yeah.
And we'll definitely dig into different portions, different segments of the documentary that I really enjoyed. There was just a number of moments that I can really pull from, but one that I'll pitch out here now is the from the courthouse to the church house. Yeah, like that particular scene, even down to like the music that was scored underneath it was fabulous. So talk to us a little bit about being there and having that conversation.
Yeah, so there's a scene where we go to the original spot where, so basically what happens with Juneteenth is you have the Union soldiers coming in to Galveston, Texas, which at that point was the biggest city in all of Texas. It's an island off the coast of the mainland. And so he goes there and he announces freedom at the courthouse and say, yo, we're here. This is the statement that you're free, that from what should have been the reality 2.5 years before when the Emancipation Proclamation came into effect. And immediately there's jubilation in the streets, word gets out, and people make this immediate kind of spontaneous pilgrimage from the courthouse to the church, which is like a few blocks away, where they have just a worship service. And there's this sense of jubilation. And so it was just this amazing moment that we wanted to make sure people understood, one, the fact that they definitely were praying and hoping and looking and waiting for a sense of freedom. And then two, when it happened, they didn't give glory to Abraham Lincoln or the Union soldiers as much as they gave glory to God for a divine deliverance.
Right. And that was one of the things that I wrote down in my notes here was, I believe it was a quote by Dr. Lattimore, where he talked about that they didn't look at this as their oppressors freed them. Yes. It was that they were emancipated by God. I thought that just really struck me the way you put that.
Yeah, I think it reveals a certain type of faith, but it also reveals the fact that, like, don't believe the hype. Like, just because someone who was enslaving people were saying, look, it says slaves will pay your master, so that's why you should be in bondage. Just because they were saying that doesn't mean that that's what the people were believing. Like, they were like, forget what you heard. Like, where the spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom and liberty. And I heard about an Exodus account in which God, came against the most powerful nation in the world to free his people. And we believe he's going to do that for us. That's why, like, even to this day, like when you go to like a lot of old timey churches, they got names like Great Exodus or Mount Moriah. Like all of those relate back to
everything. Got Mount Moriah.
Mount Moriah, right?
Mount
Sinai. But we don't understand why they named those churches in that way. And it was because they were thinking about pinnacle moments of freedom. And because, you know, that's part of the story of God's deliverance, you know, where he met them after freeing them. And that's part of the reason why those stories have that resonance. Like, and that's what they call Harriet Tubman. Her nickname was Moses. Yeah. You know, so. Yeah.
So that's amazing. That's amazing. Man, there was a few others in there that were really, really good, but I want to kind of take a look at just like the filming of Juneteenth. Yeah. So you said it was shot in 6 days.
Yes.
6 days. That's unheard of. Like that's wild to think that something like that can happen. So talk to us a little bit about like how all those things kind of fell into place for it to happen in such a short period of time. Part
of it, I mean, we had to have an incredible team. Like I mentioned, Our Daily Bread Ministries makes a lot of great films, and they make them available free of charge, or you can see it on the YouTube page at Our Daily Bread. But so we have a great team of editors. We worked with the director. Shout out to Yaki Smith. He's a film professor at UT Austin, University of Texas at Austin, and he's just incredibly talented. So he got on board, and so we had a great team. But it also took like sovereign, divine intervention, because let me tell you, like. So we only had time in the budget to be like in Galveston for like a day and a half, in Houston for like a day and a half, and then in Dallas Fort Worth for a day and a half. And we had to get everybody in those particular time slots that we wanted to talk to.
Wow.
And so, and then with weather and traffic and all the things, and wouldn't you know it, God worked it out. The weather was perfect, and everybody was available exactly when we needed them to be in order to have that type of rigorous schedule. And we were able to shoot it and then turn around the editing in that quick.
Yeah, you were telling me before we started recording just about how it was kind of centered around one individual.
Oh man,
and that story was incredible.
Yeah, so we had been working with Lecrae in the past. He'd been on the Where You're From podcast, and so we knew he was a native Texan. We knew, you know, Juneteenth was something that he was very familiar with. Yeah. And so we reached out to him about being able to collab on it. And he was like, there's only one day I'm available. And that's April, 1st. And we were like, okay, we were planning on shooting 2 weeks ahead of time to kind of get it done. But we were like, we got to get him. So we say yes. And we built our entire recording schedule around that particular recording.
But you were already planning things 2 weeks before. So had you already started talking to other individuals?
Yeah, but we were just able to push back the calendar. And so to get him in, and that was really powerful. And then we got Miss Opal Lee, the grandmother of Juneteenth. She just got a Medal of Freedom, award from the White House. I mean, it was just the highest, honor that somebody can get as just a citizen. And she said yes. And so we were able to get her right here, and so it was just like those type of moments that put all the right people in the places exactly when we needed them. And then at the same time, we wanted to work on a soundtrack, because you can't talk about Jubilee or you can't talk about jubilation without talking about music and celebration. And so we started reaching out to Show Baraka. Shout out to Show Baraka.
That is my goat.
And that became the start to the whole soundtrack.
Got it. So that's just amazing. Like I always use like this same analogy a lot when I talk about like how like God divinely sets things up. It's almost like he goes before us and sets up this beautiful domino situation. He just beautifully puts it together, and then he'll hand you one little piece and ask you to do one little thing.
Right.
And then, which seems completely silly sometimes. Yeah. Or it could just seem like, why am I doing this? Even like me, like, I'm just going to DM Rasool and see what happens.
Right.
But now here we are sitting at a undisclosed location. And like, but for you, it was a conversation with Lisa Fields.
Yep.
And you somehow, some ways, some reason, you put together a proposal and you presented it.
Yep.
And 6 months later, an entire documentary. And now you're touring. You're a busy man right now. Yep. You're kind of all over. This is a busy season for you. So And you mentioned music, and I mentioned like that courthouse to the church house scene, but underneath the score of that part was Sho Baraka's song.
Here.
Yeah, here from his my
with
favorite.
Lecrae in it. Yeah,
Lecrae's on that song as well.
Yeah,
it's just a dope song, but that's the instrumental that you had underneath that.
Yeah,
as you guys were walking and talking, I thought it was perfect. A nice touch that maybe only somebody like me who's a show fan would pick up. But I thought that was wonderful. So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and get into another musical break. So it's on you. What you got for us?
Yeah, well, since we're talking about my man Show, I think we got to talk about and Lecrae.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Black Reconstruction. You know what I mean?
Hey, let's do it,
dude. So here's the funny part about that song.
Okay.
So like I'm sitting there with Lecrae after we shoot, and they're just getting B-roll of us, and I tell him like, "Yo, Show's working on the album," and he was like, "I was gonna put this song on Church Clothes, but I think it's a better fit on this project," and so that's how Black Reconstruction ended up on the Juneteenth soundtrack. It would have been on Church Clothes 4. So I like to say that, look, some of that Grammy love we got as well, but it's propaganda. Lecrae, Sho Baraka, fire song. It's the Black Reconstruction.
It's a fantastic song. So Holy Culture fam, you guys sit tight. We will be right back. And once again, this is the Be Positive Music Show right here on SiriusXM, channel 140 and Holy Culture Radio. We'll be right back.
Whoa, black this, black that, black every day. Why it's always about race with you anyway? I used to love it when you only preach the gospel. Now you just a Marxist, social gospel apostle. Wait, before I enter this debate, let me serve my family who been patiently at bait. You are not the product of a slave manipulation. Your Messiah reached the nations before they came and enslaved us. Now I don't worship my skin color, we call black. It's a construct created to hold humanity back.
Welcome back to the show. B Plus here, hanging out with Rasool Berry for a very exclusive edition of the Be Positive Music Show. Say what's up to our ACR fam again.
What's going on, ACR family? Glad to be with you.
Yeah, this is going to be a continuation of a very dope conversation. We've just been kind of talking about the documentary, our favorite, some of my favorite parts about it. Like I was saying, he's really busy right now going around our nation talking about Juneteenth and its importance and why it needs to be celebrated. But I want to pull out one particular portion of the documentary that meant a lot to me. Now, I guess for a backstory, I work in the world of Bible translation. Shout out to the Seed Company. And I've got an opportunity to travel the world a little bit, and I spent some time in Johannesburg. And I went to the Constitution Hill Museum, and it's pretty much it's just a prison that where people were held during apartheid.
Right.
And they've maintained a portion of it, and they've converted the rest of it to a museum. And just walking through it, they kept some things really pretty much kind of untouched. So I was able to walk through cells. They actually have a cell that Nelson Mandela spent some time in. And it was like amazing just to kind of walk through it. But they had, they only had like 6 to 8 bathrooms in this entire prison. So
people, and a facility for like hundreds of people.
Yes, and it was very sobering. But there was one particular portion of there, and shout out to Miss Beulah. She was at the front desk at Wycliffe, South Africa, and her and her husband, they took me around and they were showing me the museum. And I walked into a room, and it was showing that some of the things they did to discipline people. Yeah. We know here in America, when we get, if you are unfortunate enough to have to go through that situation, you have to stand up. All your clothes are removed, and you have to do certain things to make sure they know you're not bringing a weapon in. And they had a ridiculous version of that over there that was just completely dehumanizing.
Yeah.
So seeing that, and then you kind of walk around this corner, and they had this, I can only describe it as like a torture rack thing where you stood up, you were strapped in, and like I walked around it, and I almost like when I saw it, I was like, this can't be what I'm looking at.
Right.
And like I slowed down to like a trot almost, and I just kind of stopped. And at that exact moment, Miss Beulah had her hand on the small of my back, and she used a throwback term. She said, "Place like this, you need the Holy Ghost to be able just to
maintain."
Yeah, because it was the anger, the disbelief. It was just I was completely shocked to know that people actually went through this.
Yeah.
So I say all that to say, like, there was a portion during the documentary where you were walking through, and I believe there were the sugar plantation.
Right.
So how hard was it for you to, like, for me, like, there was a disconnect there just because I didn't go through apartheid.
Right.
This is a whole different country.
Yeah.
But for you, like, this is America.
Right.
And this is what we've gone through. Like, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I've also been to Johannesburg and been to the Apartheid Museum, and even though the details of the story are different,
A lot of parallels.
There's a lot of parallels, and in fact, the apartheid regime, like, notoriously came to America to study how we did segregation,
and they did it better,
and they improved it, quote unquote.
That's terrible,
right? So, yes, but getting back to, so that experience is heavy when you're in those spaces. And man, I got to tell you, before this filming this, I had never been on a slave plantation before. I had never been on a plantation.
I haven't.
And bruh, this one, it just feels, it hit different when you're there and you're seeing this ornate mansion that enslaved people built, that were forced to build for the people enslaving them. And then you go and look at how the excruciatingly difficult and painful, I mean, Texas is already hot.
Yeah.
On regular. Like, so to be
right
in a enclosed situation where you're turning up the heat and purifying sugar and doing all that work, I mean, I couldn't even imagine it. And then on top of that, you see these slave quarters that you just have the remnants of now. You just can see the outline because they were made with such shoddy material that they've been long gone. And you see how small they were. And those type of experiences and seeing the physical reality of it, it really is heavy, and it really does take you to that kind of same place that you were feeling in South Africa, being like shocked that humans could do this to other humans. And then on top of that, thinking that they're doing God's will. Like, that's the part or at least claiming to be,
that's wild.
That's wild as well. And so that's why, we wanted to tell that part of the story. There's this line, speaking of Ambassador, we were talking about before, that he said, when the bad news is cold as winters with Jack Frost, the good news must shine like diamonds on black cloth. And that line has always reminded me of the fact that we can't sugarcoat or shy away from the hard brokenness of the truth, because that's the black cloth of reality that the diamonds of the gospel shines brightest on.
That's real.
And so that's why in the film we wanted to show the darkness, the difficulties, so that you could understand what the taste of freedom meant for these folks, when they heard it. Yeah.
And man, the gentleman you were talking to, and he was just talking like very matter of factly that, like, there's people who get pulled into the grinder, and there's a guy here whose
job it was to chop off people's arms so that if they got pulled into the gears of the system, they would not be totally crushed. That was somebody's job, which meant that it had to happen.
It's happened before.
Yeah.
And,
no, that was crazy.
Yeah, it's very sobering. It's very sobering. But at the same time, like you said about the diamonds shining on black cloth, it makes the portions of the documentary just talking about when you got to meet Opal.
Oh my gosh.
She was very entertaining, number one. But she was also just very determined.
Yes.
At that age, at that young age, to still be moving at the pace that she's moving and sparking change that she's sparking. It's stuff that makes you look at myself like,
what am I doing?
What am I doing with my life?
I mean, and let me tell you, man, like, because we were planning this thing out in February of 21, we find it was the same, like almost like the same week we were preparing to reach out to her, she got nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. And we were like, oh my God, like, I'm happy for you, but are we even going to be able to get in touch with her at this point? Because her life is so busy. And fortunately, through the, God's grace and the people that we were reaching out with, we were able to get a hold of her. She said yes to doing it. I mean, she's 97 years old, 97. And just yesterday, she hosted her first Juneteenth Film Festival.
She's still doing first.
She's still doing first at 97, right? So it's like it is inspiring.
Yeah, it is.
She's like, look, at 89 years old, I felt like I needed to do more, and so I started on this journey of pushing to have Juneteenth be a national holiday. And those are the moments in the film, and she is just amazing. She's funny, full of life, and I mean, I'm sitting next to her yesterday, and we're doing the Q&A about the film, and she still has that fire. And so we definitely wanted to show that part of it too, because that's the joy. Because when she, goes to the White House and is like honored there by the President of the United States, and they're at the signing, like that was like such a place of joy for her and a sense of accomplishment. That's something that she had started when she was 89, and that had happened before that had come to fruition.
Yeah, that's I still remember the first time watching the doc and just hearing her say that. I forget the question exactly how you asked it, but she said that, I'm on cloud 9.
Yes.
Like you can, like, just the way she said it, I was just like, I got the chill bumps, and I was just like, wow, like that's amazing to see all that she's seen in her life.
Yeah.
And for her to be, like I said, at that young age, still doing that.
At that young age, that's funny.
At that young age, because like it's. I don't know how she does it, but it's definitely God's grace.
Yeah.
God's grace on her.
Yeah.
And she also said that like it matters.
Yes.
I'm around Black and white people who both feel like, why do we need another holiday?
Right.
Like, why are we doing this? Oh, they're just doing it just for political reasons. They're not really, don't have a heart behind this. At the end of the day, we have a holiday that is celebrating American history.
Yes.
Whether they want to not show that black cloth or not, it's there.
Yeah. And I think it is important. You mentioned South Africa. One of the reasons why they were able to not be torn apart, like people, when Nelson Mandela was released from prison and he was coming out and the end of apartheid was happening, there were global concerns that there would become a civil war in there, because now all of a sudden 80% of the population who was oppressed by 20% are now going to be in positions of power, right? And so that kind of fear and that kind of thing was there. But what they decided to do, Bishop Desmond Tutu at the time helped organize a Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
I've heard of that.
And what they would gather is they were like, look, it's so important that we just hear the truth. And so they offer various levels of amnesty or forgiveness if people just told what their part in the story, right? So white South Afrikaners who had done horrible things, people who were fighting for freedom, who were Black South Africans who had done horrible things, like just hearing the story. And there was something about, and then of course the Apartheid Museum, where you see this whole system of racism that was set up, like these things, the fact that they told the truth about it helped the country not get torn apart.
And it helped jumpstart reconciliation.
And again, I'm not to say that there aren't problems or challenges or anything like that. Of course there are, but they told the truth. And I think that as Americans, we have often been avoiding the truth. We've often been like overlooking it. And so to have something like slavery that has had such a profound impact on the way we think about race, on the way we talk about class and financial challenges, all of those things, of course, it makes sense for us to have a commemoration of the end of that story as a way of reflecting what do we need to do now so that we can continue to grow and improve as one nation under God.
And that's what I love about not only the documentary, but you guys have some other things going on as well that help to do that. I definitely want to leave some space, maybe in our last quarter of our show, so you can kind of point some people in those directions of what we can be doing. But this is an important story. It's an important piece of American history, because you're right. When you don't tell the truth about it, it just kind of leaves some things open. I mean, we can't even enjoy good sports stories. Like this whole Caitlin Clark story right now. It's like we should be able to enjoy this, but because people have their angles and things like this, we can't even enjoy good things. Right. So we have to find ways to tell truth so that we can, like, there's still gonna be problems after that, but still it's almost like kind of ripping the Band-Aid off a little bit.
Yeah, and I think when I think about it biblically, I think this is why, like in 1 John 1:9, when it says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us of all of our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Those are the benefits that come after what? Confessing,
Yeah.
And so we have to confess, and to confess is to agree with, is to say the same thing as God about a certain situation. And so there's that sense of us being honest and true about our history, the baggage that and not just something that happened 150 years ago, but its impact today, which is why the film, we don't stop at June 19, 1865. We continue the story going, because the reality was not all of the things that were hoped for or promises came to pass immediately. And so we wanted to continue to pull on that thread, because our history helps us understand our present, which helps us understand what God might have to do for us in the present, in the future, in order to bring about justice and make earth look and feel a little bit more like the justice of heaven.
Yeah, because you guys did get right into talking about Reconstruction, and you guys even got into like redlining and the emergence of the KKK and things like that right there in the documentary. So so we are gonna take another quick break, and get into some more music. But I want our guest today to take us to our next musical break.
Yeah. So with this one, last year we put out a deluxe version of the album. Okay. Which we had some instrumentals, some acapellas, but we also were able to work with an incredibly talented sister who also has appeared on the Church Clothes 4 album, Ai the Anomaly. Yes. And let me tell you, talk about time. This sister put together this song in a week. It's called Privilege. Incredible song, sonically just so rich and full of vibes. And there's a video that comes out that she put out with it that just came out like 2 months ago.
Okay, so, wow. I don't think I've seen that before.
Yeah. And
she's incredibly talented.
Incredibly talented sister. So give it up for Ai the Anomaly, Privilege.
A room with no pigment trying to tell me what black is. I'm privileged. Even with my past full of distance, I'm privileged. Even when you gain from my winning, I'm privileged. America, stand from these hands of privilege. Standing with our hands held high. Freedom was a plan whole time. We come from God. That's privilege. That's privilege.
Holy Culture family, we are now rounding out the end of our hour here with Rasool Berry. I am B+ for this very special edition of the Be Positive Music Show. So before we get into some of the more practical things we could be doing around Juneteenth, as far as educating ourselves and what to do moving forward, I do want to talk about something that we talked about before camera, and that was Jubilee, this idea of Jubilee. So can you help tie that together for our listeners?
Yeah, no doubt. So one of the reasons why sometimes people ask, well, why would our Daily Bread ministries, like a ministry, talk about like this story of Juneteenth, right? Yeah. What's the connection? And for me, one of the connections became apparent when I discovered through Miss Opal Lee and her spreading awareness about Juneteenth, that Juneteenth had a lot of other names that people, what they called it, because June and Teenth is just a portmanteau or a connection of June and 19th, right? Mm-hmm. But that emerged over time as the prominent name. But it was also called Emancipation Day, Freedom Day, and Jubilee Day. Yeah. And when I heard that one of the names is Jubilee Day, it struck me in my tracks, because Jubilee is, you can find the biblical basis. It's one of the festivals in the Bible that you see in Leviticus 25. And I call it the Super Bowl of Sabbaths.
I like that.
Yeah, because like if you look at the Sabbath like a regular season game, right? Like it's every week on a Sunday, Sabbath originally Friday night, Saturday. But Sabbath was a weekly representation of rest. Now, oftentimes we miss out on the ethical and justice implications of Sabbath because it wasn't just about resting to trust God and honor God and restore yourself. But in the commandments, oftentimes God's command for Sabbath was connected to the fact that, remember, you were enslaved in Egypt. So therefore you should rest. But also if you have employees, they need to rest. Mm-hmm. Your animals need to rest. Even give the plants rest. So like part of the expression of Sabbath was us as being made in the image of God, being in a position of power and control, having enough equity and justice that nobody that's under my leadership should be forced to work too. Yeah. So that's like the original Sabbath. But then you get to Jubilee, every 49th year was the kind of 7-year cycle times 7 was 49. So on the 50th year was the year of Jubilee. And in the year of Jubilee, the the instructions were that not only do you not like work, but that for the whole year, anybody who had debts that were like incurred, they get those debts forgiven. Anybody whose lands have been taken away because of, they couldn't afford to pay it, so evicted or foreclosed, get those lands back. And anybody who was in bondage would be set free. Now imagine, right, all the student loan debt, all the credit card debt being wiped away.
That'd be wild.
That'd be wild, right?
Yeah.
People be celebrating. And so that's why it was called Jubilee, because it was its idea of jubilation and celebration.
Got it.
And so for these formerly enslaved people to experience June 19th and say, this is our Jubilee, this is God who has made earth a little bit more like heaven. It's a powerful picture of the type of hope and faith that they had about who it was that was delivering them and why and how.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. And it's I'm just encouraged that Our Daily Bread is doing this, partnering with you, but there are other things that that they're doing around Juneteenth. So let's talk about that real quick.
So we created this because we wanted, in a time where there's so much division and also so much just like rancor around history or racism, we wanted to give the church, equip us with the ability to be able to think about the opportunity that Juneteenth gives us.
Just practical ways
to think about these things, to talk about it, and to have hope. And so, in addition to being able to make the film available on YouTube, which you can go and check it out, and it's on PBS. It's been aired over 300, almost 400 times over the last 2 years. On PBS, so you can check your local listings for that. But in addition to all of those, we also have made it available for you to host a screening, because the reality is, when you're in a gathering, you don't want to see ads pop up in the middle of a presentation, right? And so we've created a way. If you go to experiencevoices.org/Juneteenth, you can fill out your information and agree to the licensing agreement. And when you do that, we will give you content, we'll give you discussion questions, we'll give you ads to be able to promote it, and actually a digital copy of the film so that you could actually host a screening with no ads. And for a limited time, what we did was we created a promotional opportunity so that the album, which only existed digitally until this year, now you can get the vinyl version of it.
So is that the vinyl of
Juneteenth, Faith and Freedom?
Of the deluxe, or that?
This is, because with vinyl you can't have all as much, so it doesn't have the instrumentals on of the deluxe or the acapella, but it does have privilege. So it has all of the songs, so that song that was on the deluxe version is on this version, as well as Black Reconstruction, as well as all the other songs. And so while supplies last, we made a limited edition. This is the only project that we know of that's like this, that has all the different elements of like all these themes of freedom. It has hip hop, Show Baraka, Lecrae, Prop, my man, Reflect. It has poetry from the film, gospel, R&B. All of it is there. So some great stuff on there. In addition to that, you can get devotional booklets, the Juneteenth devotional booklets. You can get those available. And so what we like to encourage people to do is to give out the devotionals at the screening. And so there's that. So you got music, you got a film, you got devotionals, and then we would also encourage you to sign up to our mailing list, because we got some other new content coming out in September. I am one of the editors for a book called The Whole Man. We shows coming back. He's involved with that project as well, both as a contributing writer and as a musician. We got a new song coming out in September. You don't want to miss any of those things. So go to experiencevoices.org, hit us up on the newsletter list, and then that way you'll get access to all the stuff that's coming out.
Man, this has been an amazing show. So thankful and grateful for you. I know you are super busy. You were in a whole other city catching red eyes just to get here today, and you've done a screening last night. You're going to another one here this evening. So I really do appreciate you taking some time, just kind of hanging out with me and having the very first ever live in-person interview here on the show. Looking to do more of these. So this has been really a blessing. Anything on the way out? Yeah, man. Well, this is Holy Culture Radio, so I gotta drop one last song. Oh yeah, and go for it. There's a young dude out of New York City, where I live now, named Reflect,
And when we reached out to him about being a contributor to the album, he put pen to paper and gave us a banger.
Okay.
Called Tell Pharaoh. It'll make your head nod, and it also tells the story of Juneteenth through rap. I don't know of any other song in the world that does what Tell Pharaoh is doing. So I think we should end out on that.
Okay. Well, you heard it. You heard it. You guys really get in contact with all the things they have going on. This is an awesome opportunity to embrace the bad parts about our history, but also look towards practical ways where we can just be where we can just do the gospel better and treat our fellow image bearers better and with love. So with that being said, I am B+. This is Rasool Berry, and this has been the Be Positive Music Show. So until next time, peace in, confusion out, and be positive.
Peace out.
Tell Pharaoh, oh Pharaoh, you gotta let go, bruh, you gotta let go. This is Juneteenth, yeah, you gotta let go. It's Freedom Day, yeah, you gotta let go. No, I don't remember the Alamo. I recall being 3/5 on your galapos. Ballots closed, auction blocks, mommy's daddy sold, rape, murder in jail for those that made your status grow. Gave you world power, and this is our thank you note. Smirk at reparations while you eating off our plate.